morning. Welcome to the King's Report for Wednesday, August 16th, 2017. We're in the 8th year of Cheongi, the 6th month and the 25th day by the heavenly calendar. I'm Tim Elder, and I'm here in place of the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-moon, today, who will be conducting the Korean service later on this morning. Let's go to our weather first. In the Cheongguk area, it's foggy and 65 degrees right now. We seem to have a lot of fog in the early mornings at this time of year. We're expecting it to get up to 84 degrees today. The probability for precipitation is officially zero, according to the weather report. And we're expecting partly sunny skies, partly cloudy skies this evening, and getting down to 56 degrees, and then 82 tomorrow. We seem to be having a period of very nice weather. It's some people are saying it's cooler than usual, but actually, if you look at the historical averages, we're tracking the historical averages for each day pretty closely. So this is pretty much an average summertime for the Poconos region these days. Right now, we have, I understand, about 120 or more young people at the summer camp, the Sanctuary Church summer camp. That's really an amazing thing. They had an amazing time last year, I know, and I think I'm sure they must be having a wonderful time this year as well. We just hope that everyone there can have fun, be safe, and learn a lot about God, and grow closer to God and to Father, and to the three-generation kingships. Thank you. Let's go now to our Rimas for today. First of all, we're in the Bible. We're in 2nd Chronicles, chapter 5, verse 10. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables which Moses put therein at Horeb when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt. And then in the Cheonseongeong, I'd like to read from the very beginning paragraph of Book 4, True Family. This is chapter 1, the true family originally intended at the time of creation. Section 1, God's will through Adam and Eve. Many talk about God's will, and many believers have prayed, Heavenly Father, may your will be done. The words in themselves seem simple, but it is difficult for us when asked to articulate precisely what God's will is. At present, we are leading lives of faith to accomplish that will, but there is some contradiction in living a life of faith and praying for the accomplishment of God's will without knowing what that will is. I think that's a very astute thing that Father points out, that for thousands of years people have prayed that God's will be done without really knowing what God's will is. Of course, Jesus knew when he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane that night, just before he was arrested by the soldiers, by the Roman soldiers. He said, not my will, but thy will be done. Jesus knew exactly what God's will was. God's will was for the people of Israel to accept him, but if not, then for Jesus to be hung on the cross so that he could be made a sacrifice at least for the spiritual salvation, and so that God's providence could continue. And through our true Father, we know what God's will is. We know that God's will is for us to complete our character, to establish true families, and to have a dominion over the earth. That is to fulfill the 3 great blessings that God gave to Adam and Eve. God's will is that his ideal of creation, which he established at the beginning of creation, that ideal of creation be accomplished. That is his will. And we know that the fundamental unit of the kingdom of heaven is the family. And so his will is for the family to be established as true families. That is what he willed at the beginning, and that is what he continues to will today. We know that through the principle that God first had the design for human beings in his mind, and then created the universe based on that design. In the creation, human beings were the last of God's creation, but in terms of the design, in terms of the conceptual process, human beings were the first. And so we were created to be God's object of true love, so that he could give love to us and that we could return all joy to him. That means that God has put us in an incredibly valuable position of incredible value. It means that we can be God's object partner, that we can have a direct relationship with God. That's an amazing thing if you think about it. You know, true Father often spoke very harshly against a number of things. He spoke harshly, of course, against communism and against homosexuality and things like this. And when you think about it, what he spoke harshly against were things that devalued human beings, because that was what would go directly against God's will. And that is why he was so strongly against communism, so strongly against homosexuality, and so strongly against anything that devalued human beings. In the 2nd Chronicles, it talks about God's covenant. That ideal of creation, those are 3 great blessings. Those were the original covenant that God gave to us. We lost that, and so as the Israelites were coming out of Egypt, God gave it to the Israelites again in the form of the 10 Commandments, in form of the law. And then when Jesus came, gave us a new covenant, and now in this completed Testament age, God gives us another covenant, and he leads us to fulfill that covenant, to fulfill that original covenant that he gave to us, that is to build God's ideal kingdom on this earth. All right, let's take a short break now, and we'll be back in a minute and start going through the news from a Cheongguk Group perspective. 문이 열려 있습니까?
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, August 16th, 2017, 8th year of Cheongguk, the 6th month and the 25th day by the heavenly calendar. So everyone is up in arms, almost literally, about Trump's news conference as he was going into the Trump Tower last night. So he was going to the Trump Tower, and people and the reporters started asking questions, and then he started answering them, and things got heated and excited, and he said all sorts of things. Well, basically, he was saying that the left also shares responsibility, and he criticized the left for not feeling any kind of remorse for or responsibility for what was going on. And Ann Coulter applauded Trump on his response to Charlottesville, and she said, "We got our leader back." Conservative commentator Ann Coulter praised President Trump's comments at a press conference on Tuesday, saying, "We got our leader back," after Trump said there was blame on both sides of violence in Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend. Coulter tweeted a video of Trump's remarks at the Trump Tower press conference, comparing Trump to the biblical military leader, judge, and prophet Gideon. Fun part, binary, white nationalism, the removal of the state, and himself against bipartisan, violent, and confronting white supremacists and neo-Nazi groups. You see what this Hill is doing? This fight for the sovereignty of America. So the Hill also, this writer in this publication, The Hill, is also doing the same, that Trump was slow in condemning white nationalists. Well, white nationalists don't necessarily deserve condemnation. I don't think, for example, Trump would want to condemn people like Steve Bannon in the way that he would also condemn neo-Nazis, and yet the Hill is trying to imply that that is the case, that they deserve equal condemnation. And so this is part of the way in which the mainstream or the leftist media confuse people and try to form public opinion against those who are fighting globalism, and against those who are insisting on sovereignty for the United States, that the United States maintain its sovereignty. These publications are trying to make America go the way it was going before Trump was elected. And if Hillary had been elected, definitely we would be going in that direction of globalism, and we would be going in the same direction that Europe is going today, that Germany and France are going today. But fortunately, she was not elected. And fortunately, we got a leader who understands the importance of American sovereignty, and he is fighting for that. And so people are trying. So the media is trying to equate that with racism. But really, yes, I think we really are fortunate that we have a president who is fighting for us in that way. Also on a Breitbart, next on liberals' list for destruction, Confederate carvings at Stone Mountain Memorial. Let's take a look at that. So right now, one of the guests that we had recently made a very good point that for the left, history begins today. In other words, everything in the past is bad. George Washington had slaves, Thomas Jefferson had slaves, and so everything in the past is bad, and there's nothing that we can learn from the past. So we just need to live according to today and whatever we can figure out today. But then, of course, those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. So that's going. This article says, as fights over Confederate monuments continue across the country, liberals are again gearing up to force the state of Georgia to destroy the giant carvings of 3 Confederate Civil War generals on the side of state-owned Stone Mountain. This week, a Democratic candidate for governor, Stacey Abrams, released a statement calling for the destruction of the 158-foot-long bas-relief first started in 1923, according to Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The African-American Democrat called the monument a blight on Georgia and slammed the monument as having been funded by the KKK, despite that it was the state and federal governments that paid for most of its creation. Abrams laid out her case in a long series of tweets posted on August 16th. Instead, the liberals have been fighting to have the carving removed, at least since the Charleston church shooting in the summer of 2015. While Lost Cause supporters did organize to initiate the project back in 1915, their money ran out quickly and their support stopped when only one figure was fairly begun. In fact, the project laid fallow for 36 years until the state and the federal government became involved in the late 1950s and floated the funds to finish the carvings. The site was purchased by the state of Georgia in 1958, but the sculpture was still incomplete due to the 2 world wars, funding problems, and numerous deadlines. Also in Chicago, we see that Chicago police clashed with Antifa protesters outside Cook County Courthouse. Chicago police clashed with members of the local Antifa group outside Cook County Courthouse Tuesday evening. 3 protesters were detained. The violent Antifa activists gathered outside the Cook County Courthouse at Belmont and Western starting at 2 p.m., claiming to protest a hearing of a man they said is a white supremacist, DNA Info reported. Police approached the protesters and asked them to stop blocking the streets and to move their marching to a sidewalk. But as the discussion continued, at least one protester began to scuffle with officers. In seconds, several protesters jumped in and began a brawl with police. See, Antifa is a violent organization. They are a violent organization. Their effort is not to convince people with words. Their effort is to convince people with sticks and whatever other weapons that they can get their hands on. And so, for example, in Charlottesville as well, Antifa was very much a part of that violence. And so for the media to pretend that only the right was responsible for that violence is simply ridiculous. The media, I know, right now is siding with anything that is anti-Trump. And so they are also siding with Antifa. They are siding with Islam. They are siding with anything that they think will help to bring down Trump. But as we see in Chicago here, in a left-wing city, Antifa is fighting with police. The group consisted of perhaps a dozen protesters, some of them wearing black masks. In a video of the incident, one protester with a red bandana over his face is seen beating on the car of a passerby. I mean, come on. What did that guy do? This passerby, this guy just goes up and starts beating on it. Chicago police reported that 3 protesters were detained. Officials could not confirm that anyone appearing in court that day was connected to any white supremacist group. So they just made it up. They just made it up. We have no idea who they were. Maybe they don't know who they were protesting. Maybe it was nobody. They just decided, hey, why don't we have a protest today? Well, what are we going to protest about? Well, let's pretend that there's a white supremacist in the courthouse and we can protest against that. Who's the white supremacist? Who's the white supremacist that we're protesting against? Who cares? Let's just have a protest. Let's fight with the police. Let's get some little exercise in there. That's all that is about. So really, in America today, we have a civil war that is not a little bit of a violent civil war, not just words, not just articles going back and forth, not just words, but actually some violence involved in this civil war now. We don't know how far it's going to go, but it looks like it is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And so we need to always keep our wits about us and keep calm and deal with the situation as it arises. In every neighborhood and in every town, we need to be ready for those who would seek to destroy our societies with violence. Let's be careful of how, let's be aware of our surroundings today. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll be back in a minute or so with more news from a Tony Group perspective.
I'm down here at the range today. I just learned a new technique from the father of the .44 Magnum, Elmer Keith, which is called shooting out of the notch, which allows you to make really long distance shots and still have an extremely precise sight picture. So I brought my CW9 car down, and with this little gun, we're gonna shoot this little munchkin at 200 yards up in the hills, applying this technique, and hopefully we'll make the shot. to apply this technique, instead of using the blade of the front sight lined up with the top of the rear sight, I'm going to take the dot of the front sight and raise it up so that it's out of the notch, but I'm still going to keep the front sight on my target. Bringing that front sight up like that is going to compensate for the bullet drop over that excessively long distance with just this little gun. So if applied right, we should be making contact. Let's see how it goes. I saw this shot, so I'm a little bit out of breath because you gotta run to make sure that is what I thought it was, and it was. So while making this shot, from that distance with these white dot sights, it literally would cover the entire target. You couldn't see what you were shooting. So using the Elmer Keith technique, you were able to raise it out of the back notch, I can't breathe, out of the back notch, allowing you to keep your accuracy, aim, and also still see the target, which is key because it was a hard shot, not gonna lie. But yeah, it went great, and Elmer knows what he's talking about. And for such a small gun to be able to take that hit, I'm very impressed with this. All right, guys, be sure to like and share, and I'll see you out on the range. That was awesome. Hey, could I try that one? Yeah, let's see with the 380. Does everybody have eyes and ears?
And welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, August 16th, 2017. We're already more than halfway through August. Time is really flying. So Ann Coulter says we got our leader back, and so let's take a look at this news conference that sparked that encouraging tweet from Ann Coulter. This is from an AFP article. U.S. President Donald Trump sparked another political firestorm Tuesday when he doubled down on his initial response to the violent white supremacist rally. See there? Again, it's a white supremacist rally. These people were there. They wanted to express their opposition to the removal of a Robert E. Lee statue. Does that make them white supremacists? No. There are various reasons for wanting to keep that statue. I don't know. You know, I'm not really on either side of this. I mean, if the people of Charlottesville want to have a statue, have a statue. If you don't want to have a statue, if you want to remove it, remove it. But people are going to be on both sides of it, and they're free to express their opinions. But then to call that a white supremacist rally is definitely wrong, especially when this is a wire story. Wire stories are supposed to be neutral, but this one definitely is not. That in Charlottesville that ended in bloodshed, saying there was blame on both sides. The Republican president, who one day ago solemnly denounced racism and singled out the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis as criminals and thugs, also hit out at what he called the alt-left over the weekend melee. Trump has faced days of criticism from across the political spectrum over his reaction to Saturday's unrest in the Virginia college town, where a rally by neo-Nazis and white supremacists, there you go, neo-Nazis and white supremacists. It was just a group of people that wanted to express their opinions. And there were a few of these extremists there. Yeah, that happens a lot, that you can have some extremists there. But to characterize the rally itself as neo-Nazis and white supremacists, definitely wrong and bad reporting. Supremacists over the removal of a Confederate statue erupted in clashes with counter-demonstrators. Now, wait a second. The counter-demonstrators, they were violent. So just to call them counter-demonstrators, a very neutral term, again, is bad reporting. The violent fracas ended in bloodshed when a 20-year-old suspected Nazi sympathizer James Fields plowed his car into a crowd of anti-racism protesters, leaving one woman dead and 19 others injured. There again, citing anti-racism protesters. They were, I would say that some of them were actually racist themselves. In a rowdy exchange with journalists at Trump Tower in New York, Trump made clear on Tuesday that he was fed up with continued questioning about the issue. I think there's blame on both sides, Trump said. His new White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, a former Marine general, appeared displeased during the president's long tirade, standing rigidly. You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that. But I'll say right now, Trump continued, what about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt? There are two sides to a story. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. As far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible, horrible day, Trump said. Trump's comments were immediately welcomed by David Duke, a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan and key figure in Saturday's rally. Thank you, President Trump, for your honesty and courage to tell the truth about Charlottesville and condemn the leftist terrorists, Duke tweeted. Now, Duke has been a very extremist person for a long time, but he does not represent the overall right wing at all. He's a very fringe character. But on the political left, the president's words were met with indignation. Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama, the first black U.S. president, said on Twitter, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion." Well, the rally was about the Robert E. Lee statue, not about the color of his skin. Obama's tweet was the most liked in history, according to the site. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont launched a broadside at Trump, tweeting at the president, you are embarrassing our country and the millions of Americans who fought and died to defeat Nazism." Charlottesville violence was fueled by one side, white supremacists spreading racism, intolerance, and intimidation. Those are the facts, said Tim Kaine, former Democratic vice president candidate and senior senator from Virginia. The state's other Democratic senator, Mark Warner, tweeted, "No words." Trump's fellow Republicans were also quick to distance themselves from his remarks. "We must be very clear, white supremacy is repulsive." Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan wrote on Twitter, "This bigotry is counter to all this country stands for. There can be no moral ambiguity." All the condemnations also spilled beyond the political realm. NBA superstar, et cetera, and they go on and on and on and on and on. Outside Trump Tower, where the president spoke, hundreds of people protested to denounce racism. They were surrounded by police officers to prevent clashes with a handful of Trump supporters nearby. "We are here to stay, we are here to fight," the protesters said. When asked why he waited until Monday to explicitly condemn hate groups present in Charlottesville, Trump said he wanted to be careful not to make a quick statement on Saturday without all the facts. "I wanted to make sure, unlike most politicians, that what I said was correct," Trump insisted. Trump called Fields, who has been charged with second-degree murder, a disgrace to himself, his family, and his country. But he also said that while there was troublemakers in the rally, there were also many people there to innocently protest and very legally protest to the removal of a very important statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. That's a very true statement. That's a very true statement, that while there were troublemakers at the rally, there were also many people there to innocently protest and very legally protest the removal of a very important statue. So this is the point. The press, the mainstream press, is focusing on the few troublemakers who were there and then expanding that to represent the entire rally, to represent all the people who were there. To call this, say this was a white supremacist rally. This was a rally of the troublemakers. And so they're taking the minority and making it the absolute majority, the overall majority. This is how the press tries to formulate public opinion in their direction. Excuse me while I take a drink there. And Trump is going on here. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? And is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? He said angrily, referring to the fact they owned slaves. Are we going to take down statues of George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? You're changing history. You're changing culture. Exactly what they're doing. They're changing history. They're changing culture. History is not being taught in schools today. In fact, children, I understand, are learning that our founding fathers are racists, who don't have anything to contribute. They're dead white men. And that the Constitution itself is something that was written 200 years ago and no longer applies today. This is what many people are starting to believe, because this is what they're being taught by their teachers in school. The president also defended the controversial far-right chief strategist Steve Bannon. Far-right, again, these labels that they put on people. You see how the media creates these labels? White nationalist, white supremacist, far-right, chief strategist, this kind of thing. These are labels that they put on people, insisting that he is not a racist, but without ruling out his possible departure from the West Wing. Let me tell you what a racist is, for example. Let me tell you about this guy that I actually had contact with, because I graduated from a high school in Japan where a lot of missionary kids were going. And, some of us were located in rural areas of Japan. Our families were there, and so we lived in a dormitory in one particular city in Japan. And it was a school that was founded in the early 20th century by Canadian missionaries. And so it was called Canadian Academy, although it was located in Japan. And I was in the dormitory also that had about 50, I guess, boys, I guess. There was another dormitory for girls that had about 30 or so girls. And in the past few years, I started noticing that one of the people that I knew back then was posting some strange stuff on our high school's alumni website. And so I went there, and he was talking about how it's actually called American Renaissance, I think. Anyway, he was talking about how Western civilization was created by Anglo-Saxon people, and that only Anglo-Saxon people can maintain this civilization. Well, I was very shocked, because I knew this guy. I mean, he was 2 years ahead of me in high school, and we were in the same dormitory. So, 2 years is a big difference back then, and so we didn't really have too much exchange. He may not even remember me, but I certainly remember him. He was 2 years ahead, and he was a track star and one of the smartest kids in school and that kind of stuff. And so I wrote him an email, and he answered a few weeks later. And in the email, I asked him, well, what do you think about international or interracial marriage? And he wrote back, and I didn't tell him about myself. In actual reality, I'm married to a Korean woman, but he assumed that because we had known each other in Japan, that I had married a Japanese. And so he was very careful in his remarks. He didn't want to offend me, obviously, but he did say that by marrying outside of the white race, I was diluting the white gene pool. That's what he said. I was very disgusted by that, so I deleted the email. And now I see him appearing in the news sometimes. I saw his face on somebody had posted a video by him on Facebook last night, and he's being described as a white nationalist. He's not a white nationalist. He is a white racist. This guy is a white supremacist. That is the face of a white racist. He's calling himself Jared Taylor now. In high school, we knew him by another name. I don't know why he changed his name. But anyway, he very definitely the same person. That is the face of a white supremacist and a white racist. But he's describing himself as a white nationalist. Steve Bannon is a white nationalist. In other words, he's a nationalist who happens to be white. He's nationalist because he's fighting for American sovereignty. And you can be white, or you can be black, or you can be Hispanic, or you can be Asian, and still be fighting for American sovereignty. I mean, whiteness and nationalism don't really necessarily have to go together. But the media now is equating people like this, like Jared Taylor, calls himself Jared Taylor, with Steve Bannon. And that is another way in which they are trying to brand people like Steve Bannon as racist. Steve Bannon is a good guy. Jared Taylor is a bad guy. But the media is trying to blur that distinction between good and evil. Good and evil. Jared Taylor is evil. Steve Bannon is good. But the media is blurring that distinction by calling them both white nationalists. And that's wrong. And we need to be very careful when we read these stories about these labels that the media puts on people. And then pressed as to whether he might visit Charlottesville, Trump, criticized by some for not telephoning victims of the violence, said he owns one of the largest wineries in the United States in that area. President bought the winery in 2011 and has given it to his son, Eric Trump. So, you know, he's being criticized for not calling them, for not telephoning them. Obviously, that's what Obama would have done, I'm sure. And so the press is criticizing Trump for not being Obama. He's guilty as charged. He is not Obama. That is certainly true. All right. Let's see. What else do we have here going on? There in one in four would follow president to the end. Networks spend 77% of evening news on wild press conference. CBS, 100%. So if you're not watching the evening news, I guess you missed all this. That was the big thing on the news last night. Let's see what the Los Angeles Times has to say about this situation, if I can get them. Here we go. Donald Trump famously said early in 2016 campaign that he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose voters. For about 1 in 4 Americans, that might be true, a new poll indicates. Asked if they could think of anything that Trump could do or fail to do in his term as president that would make you disapprove of the job he is doing, about 60% of Trump supporters said no, according to a new nationwide poll released by Monmouth University in New Jersey. That's equivalent to about 1/4 of all Americans overall, given Trump's current level of support. So 60% of Trump supporters say that there is nothing that Trump could do or fail to do in his term as president that would make you disapprove of the job he is doing. So they are absolutely for Trump. That's good. That's good. 60% of Trump supporters are absolutely for Trump. There's nothing that he can do or fail to do that will make them disapprove of Trump. At the other end of the scale, most of those who disapprove of Trump said that they could not think of anything Trump could do other than resign in his term as president that would make you approve of the job he is doing. They made up 28% of the total, just slightly larger than the 24% who said they would support Trump no matter what. I think their math is their math is a little bit strange here, but anyway, that leaves about half of the American public, roughly 1 in 3 of those who support him, and about 2 in 5 of those who oppose him, who are potentially open to changing their views about his job performance, the poll indicated. Monmouth poll was slightly more favorable to Trump than most recent surveys. The poll found 49% of those surveyed disapproving of Trump's job performance and 41% approving. That was about the same as a Monmouth poll taken in July. On average, so anyway, they go into other polls. But to remember what we read about the polls about a month ago or so, that polls are not taken to find out what people think. Polls are taken to make people think a certain way. And this was covered in a story that we read some weeks ago. I can't remember exactly when. But that's the purpose of polls. You know, when polling first started in the in merchandising or marketing, brand X and you know, the good one. You know, whether it's the one that you're trying to sell, and they skew the questions and they skew the polling so as to favor the brand that they're trying to sell, so that you finally come out with the result that you're looking for. So polls are intended to create a certain public opinion. They are not intended to measure a certain public opinion. So what do we believe in terms of polling? Well, instead of basing our own opinion on what the polls say, we obviously need to form our own independent opinions. Let's see, this news site characterizes the news conference of President Trump last night as a jaw-dropping spectacle in the lobby of Trump Tower. And it says the president went off on the media while ranting about his response to the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend. Trump stepped in it when he appeared to defend the alt-right and doubled down on his original comments from Saturday. The presentation was originally supposed to be the unveiling of an infrastructure proposal that would overhaul the system. The big three networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, could not get enough of Trump's fiery and furious tirade as he went to battle with the press. And their evening news broadcasts later that day were commanded by the coverage of Trump. Minus their commercials and teasers, the total airtime the network set aside for all their news coverage combined was 58 minutes and 38 seconds. Of that total time, they spent 45 minutes and 31 seconds on Trump's wild press conference. So there's nothing else basically happening in the world except for this Trump conference, because right now there is a war going on between Trump and the media. And so the media is fighting with all that they have against Trump, and trying somehow to bring him down, because they see that as their mission in order to, not that Hillary's going to get into office if Trump comes down, but Trump's sin is that he is taking America in a different direction. He is taking America in a direction of sovereignty and against globalism. And as far as the media is concerned, that is a crime that must be stopped. So they are fighting. But from God's point of view, the opposite is true. America's sovereignty needs to be protected. America's sovereignty needs to be protected. And Trump right now is doing a great job from God's point of view. And we hope that he continues to fight the way he did last night. The way he did last night at the Trump Tower. And now, of course, some CEOs are rethinking their alliances with the White House because they are now buckling under pressure. Now under pressure, businessmen follow the money, I guess, most of them anyway. The number of members who have withdrawn from a Trump advisory council has grown to 5, according to the Wall Street Journal. President Trump's response to the weekend violence in Charlottesville, Virginia, has sparked a new round of soul searching in U.S. corporate boardrooms. Not soul searching, they're wallet searching, all right, over whether they should keep working closely with the White House. On Tuesday, the number of members who have withdrawn from White House Advisory Council grew to 5, and executives, including Walmart Stores, Inc., Chief Executive Doug McMillon, criticized the president's initial unwillingness to specifically denounce the racist hate groups that rallied in Charlottesville over the weekend. As Trump said, many of these people were just innocently protesting, wanting to express their views in a lawful manner. The fallout is testing already tense relations between the White House and corporate executives, many of whom face new pressures from employees, consumers, and activists to take stands on social and political issues. At times, those issues have put them in direct opposition with the president, whose pro-business agenda they are also seeking to shape. That's right. The president is very much pro-business. He's very much pro-business. The stock market is having an incredible run right now since President Trump was elected, and especially since his inauguration. The number of people who are on food stamps has gone down, is a low level, and the earnings reported by S&P 500 companies is the highest in, what is it, 16 years, I think it said. I have to go back and check that, but I think that's what the article said a few days ago. So everything is going well in terms of business after Trump was elected. And the left can't stand it. They don't like that fewer people are on food stamps. They don't like that people's 401ks are going up. Stock market going up is not just good for rich people, it's good for the common people. because that means your 401k is going up, and that means you have more money for when you retire. At least that's what we like to believe anyway. More leaders are expected to resign their advisory posts privately and publicly. Some business leaders have also indicated doubts about how worthwhile the White House access has been, given the mixed progress with Mr. Trump's pro-business agenda. Although the president's meetings with chief executives this spring attracted heavy news coverage, they haven't yielded significant results. Hopes of a corporate tax overhaul or an infrastructure spending plan being completed soon are fading among executives. Lawrence Summers, who served as Treasury Secretary in the Clinton administration and as a top economic advisor in the Obama White House, said in an interview that business, what do you think he said? Do you think he said Trump is doing a good thing? He was in the Clinton administration, he's in the Obama administration. Do you think he's going to say Trump is doing a great job? That business leaders serving on Trump's advisory councils should pull out, is what he said. I don't think these are forums for either detailed advice or critical advice, he said, adding that he didn't believe corporate leaders serving on such councils receive much in return. 3 CEOs of a major publicly held U.S. companies sought Ms. Timmons' advice this week about whether to take a stance on the Charlottesville violence. All 3 are Republicans who voted for Mr. Trump. Each told her they would decline a seat on his council if asked, Ms. Timmons said. Navigating the Trump presidency has been thorny from the start for CEOs. Tesla Inc.'s Elon Musk and Walt Disney Company's Robert Iger quit advisory councils to the president over his decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. Others have had to justify their presence on the councils amid continuing pressure from employees and some in the public over their roles. Yeah, so they follow the money. They follow the money. But, you know, they've discovered that they don't have to be on these advisory councils for the economy is doing well, even if whether they're on there or not. And so I guess that's why they don't feel that they need to do that. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back in a moment with more news from a China Group perspective.
Is all I see. You are my everything.
Oh, 658. 614. 646. 471.
Hello folks, I'm Justin Moon, the president of Carr Firearms Group, and today I've got the PM40 with True Glow night sights, and look at that, Magna porting. Look at that porting on that. This is our standard PM40 with the day sights, but now this model with the Magna porting and the True Glow night sights. What a difference. The 40 caliber PMs have a reputation for being quite a bit of a kicker. They do kick a lot. And so we put the Magna porting on these PM40s, and boy, what a difference does that make. It really makes this PM40 shoot a lot softer, reduces the muzzle flip, the recoil comes straight back into you, and becomes a very manageable pistol.
And we're back. Welcome back to the King's Report for August 16th, 2017. I'm Timothy Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And even overnight, more Confederate statues have been removed. In Baltimore, we see that the Robert E. Lee and Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson monument at Wyman Park Dell was removed overnight with a crowd watching. Baltimore City crews have begun removing Confederate monuments around the city. The Robert B. Taney Monument in Mount Vernon also came down. Crews are on the site of the Confederate Women's Monument at University Parkway to take that one down. This week, the Baltimore City Council passed a resolution calling for the immediate deconstruction of these monuments, days after the Unite the Right to rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, that drew, now it says, white nationalists and counter-protesters turned violent. White nationalists and counter-protesters turned violent. But, they were just protesting the removal of Robert E. Lee. I don't know if, we need to bring sovereignty and nationalism issue into that. But the left is trying to change history and change culture. And they're trying to brand everything in the past as racist. So eventually, as I think someone was saying, Trump was saying, what's next? Are they going to show up at, are they going to tear down everything of all the George Washington statues, all the Thomas Jefferson statues? That seems to be going in that direction. Well, what comes after that? I'll tell you what comes after that. The Constitution will come after that. Oh, this is a document written by racists, so let's rip it up. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that the logic, if you follow the logic of the left right now? Isn't that what they're trying to do? Rip up the Constitution? Sounds to me like that's what they're doing. Already they're denying people the right to free expression of their views. Yeah, they want to create a society where they are in charge, where they are the dictators, where they are the totalitarian dictators. Would it be too much to say they're trying to recreate North Korea here? Well, maybe not North Korea, but at least China. I bet I bet very much they'd like to see, Xi Jinping type of leader in the United States. Yeah, where in China, the Communist Party is basically the only party that is allowed. Yeah, there are other parties, but they must be obedient to the Communist Party. And it is only the Communist Party that is allowed to rule. And the military is not the military of the state, not the military of the government, not the military of the country. The People's Liberation Army, the military of China, is the military of the Chinese Communist Party. And that is the kind of society that these people are trying to create here. After they get through pulling down statues, they're going to be ripping up the Constitution. So that's what's going on in Baltimore during the night. And let's have some good news, shall we? Breaking. Texas permanently bans taxpayer funding of abortion. Now let's have some good news here for a change. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed today, this is August 15th, that's yesterday, a bill to restrict state funding for abortion insurance. The new law will keep Texans from having to pay for elective abortions through their insurance plans. As a firm believer in Texas values, I am proud to sign legislation that ensures no Texan is ever required to pay for a procedure that ends the life of an unborn child, Governor Abbott said. The bill prohibits insurance providers from forcing Texas policyholders to subsidize elective abortions. I am grateful to the Texas legislature for getting this bill to my desk and working to protect innocent life in this special session. HB 214, which the House passed last week and the Senate approved Sunday, applies to elective abortions and specifically includes an exemption for cases of medical emergency to save the mother's life. What we're saying here is, if you want to buy this coverage, you can buy it. Notice, if you want to buy coverage for abortions, you can buy it. Republican Representative John Smithy said during the House debate, this isn't about who can get an abortion. It's about who is forced to pay for an abortion. Yeah, that sounds like very good. Very, very nice to have this in use this morning. Texas must take steps to prohibit taxpayer and premium dollars from subsidizing abortions that are not medically necessary, Republican Senator Brandon Creighton said. Governor Abbott called a special legislative session to focus on the bill, along with another bill to require doctors and health clinics to report abortion complications to the state in greater detail. That second bill passed both state chambers on Friday. Just because abortion is legal does not mean that people who have significant moral concerns with the taking of innocent life, as they believe abortion does, need to pay for it through their health insurance, said Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood director in Texas who now runs And Then There Were None. Abortion advocates automatically go to the far reaches of hysteria and assume the worst with the kind of legislation that women won't be able to get abortions when they want to. Women have access to abortions, but those of us who believe it is the intentional ending of human life shouldn't have to pay for it. True Father said that human life begins at the moment of conception. At the moment of conception. Of course, a lot has to happen before that zygote can actually be born. But that is when human life begins. That is when human life begins, and that is the preciousness. That is the preciousness of human life begins at that moment. And certainly, these people who want to end life, if they want to do it, then they can use their own money, but they shouldn't make the rest of us also pay for it. Applause for Texas. Applause for Texas. Testifying for the bill before the Texas Senate Committee, State Right to Life Director Elizabeth Graham reasoned that abortion is not health care. Yes, that's right. Remember Bill Gates? We had King played a video where Bill Gates was saying something where he said that population is exploding around the world, but we can reduce population by a certain percentage by having improved vaccines and better health care. And I especially remember that phrase that he used, improved vaccines and better health care. What kind of health care is going to reduce the population of the world? This is what he was saying. We can reduce the population of the world with improved vaccines and better health care. What kind of health care is going to reduce, because better health care actually makes us live longer, right? That means that the population is going to increase. Isn't that right? So, but Bill Gates is saying that improved health care, better health care, is going to help reduce world population. So what kind of health care is he talking about? Well, he's talking about abortions. Yeah, he's talking about abortions. So he's not saying better health care. He's saying increased abortions is going to reduce the world population. That's what he wants. That's what he's suggesting. But if he say, let's decrease the world population by killing off the babies, that doesn't sound so good. That doesn't go so well, in the for the media marketers. That doesn't go so well. So instead of saying let's kill babies, he says let's have improved health care, better health care. And so this person here who represents the right to life is saying the definition of health care is to make a person well and to encourage health. She's saying that abortion is not health care. And this is another way in which the media confuses people and tries to steer them in a direction that they originally don't want to go by calling abortion health care. This lady's, is it a man or a woman? Elizabeth Graham, okay, it's a woman. The definition of health care is to make a person well and to encourage health, Graham explained. The definition of a successful abortion is the complete death of the unborn child. Yeah, so abortion is not health care. That's great. The greatest controversy over the bill centered on exemptions for fetal handicaps and for rape. Democrats unsuccessfully tried to insert the additional exemptions. Democratic Senator Sylvia Garcia fought for exemptions by charging that the bill amounts to nothing but rape insurance. No woman plans to be raped, she argued. Her exemptions were defeated on a party line 20-10 vote. New York's Center for Reproductive Rights reached across the nation to criticize the bill. CRR President Nancy Northup complained that the abortion in cases of fetal handicap is cost prohibitive for most poor women. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists also came out against the bill, claiming that abortion is essential health care. See that? they're calling abortion health care. When health care, though, is to make people live, abortion is to make people die. You cannot equate the two. The Guttmacher Institute's Elizabeth Nash said that the bill was unnecessary because most women pay out of pocket already. Well, if that's the case, then the bill's not going to do any harm, right? Okay, so why are you opposed to it? At least in part because of pro-life laws, abortions have gone dramatically down in Texas from more than 82,000 reported in 2006 to just over 54,000 in 2015. That's a tragedy that 54,000 babies were killed in Texas alone in 2015. The king, of course, liberated all those babies in spirit world in his ancestor liberation in October of last year. But it's tragic that more and more, every day, even as we speak, babies are being killed around the world. Many previous pro-life laws in Texas were overruled by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2016 as having the effect of limiting abortion access. Only 10 states have laws keeping taxpayers out of the abortion insurance business. Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Oklahoma restrict tax funds from paying for abortion insurance in all cases except a mother's life. Indiana and Utah have similar laws but include rape and incest exemptions. All allow any individual to purchase abortion insurance separately. Creighton authored another pro-life bill, SB 25, which eliminates wrong for birth lawsuits. A physician who does no wrong to the patient or baby and delivers life that ultimately is disabled is not responsible for compensating the family for the cost of rearing the child, he explained on his website. Okay. A lot of confusion going on today, but we're grateful that Texas has been clear on this point, that people should not be forced to pay for the abortions of others. People want to do that. If they want to do something immoral, then yeah, go ahead and do that. But people shouldn't have to pay for it. I mean, it's like a man going to a whorehouse and expecting the taxpayers to pay for that, right? Is that pretty much in the same way? That's the way I see it. Go to this article on end of the checkout line, the looming crisis for American cashiers. And do you know what two words come to my mind when I read that headline? Minimum wage. Minimum wage. Yeah, those are the two words that come to my mind when I hear that. When minimum wage goes up, jobs are lost. And that seems to be what's happening here, I'll bet. Let's read it and see if I'm right. The day before a fully automated grocery store opened its doors in 1939, the inventor Clarence S. Saunders took out a full-page advertisement in the Memphis Press Scimitar warning old duds with cobwebby brains to keep away. The Keydoozle, with its glass cases of merchandise and high-tech system of circuitry and conveyor belts, was cutting edge for the era, and only those of spirit of understanding should dare enter. Inside the gleaming Tennessee store, the shoppers inserted a key into a slot below their chosen items, producing a ticker tape list that, when fed into a machine, sent the goods traveling down a conveyor belt and into the hands of the customer. People could just get what they want. Boom, it comes out and move on, recalled Jim Riot, 75, who visited the store as a child. It felt like this was the Jetsons. Despite Saunders' best efforts, the Keydoozle circuits frequently failed, and the store closed for good by 1949. But 72 years after he attempted to patent his idea, advances in robotics, artificial intelligence, and other technologies are making the dream of a worker-free store a reality, and American cashiers may soon be checking out. A worker-free store, how does that sound? How does that sound? It means you can't, well, I'll tell you what it sounds to me. It means that I cannot walk into a store and fill out a job application. That's what it means to me. That's what it means to me. Won't be able to fill out a job application. Job application? What are you talking about? We don't have any jobs here. we do everything by machines. Even I'm a machine. That's probably the answer you'll get then. a recent analysis by Cornerstone Capital Group suggests that 7.5 million retail jobs, the most common type of job in the country, are at high risk of computerization, with the 3.5 million cashiers likely to be particularly hard hit. Another report by McKinsey suggests that a new generation of high-tech grocery stores that automatically charge customers for the goods they take, no checkout required, and use robots for inventory and stocking could reduce the number of labor hours needed by nearly 2/3. It all translates into millions of American jobs under threat. See, this is what happens when, that's why I say minimum wage, minimum wage, minimum wage. When minimum wage goes up, then business owners have to compensate. They have to compensate because businesses have to make a profit. If they don't make a profit, they go out of business. And so in order to make a profit, then they have to reduce the number of workers, and they invest more in automation. They would invest more in automation. And this is the result that we have, where people are losing their jobs. Job opportunities are being lost. Like I say, pretty soon you will not be able to walk into a store and ask for a job application form. You just won't be able to do it. That's the brave new world that is being created for us, again, by the left. You know, this whole minimum wage thing is being promoted by the left. Oh, you know, people have to have money. Well, people have to have jobs, and the left is destroying those jobs. Trump has been creating jobs. He's doing a great job. He's doing a very good job. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back in a minute or so with more news from a Chonic perspective, and I guess this next segment will be our last. So we'll see you in a minute.
I'm down here at the range today. I just learned a new technique from the father of the 44 Magnum, Elmer Keith, which is called shooting out of the notch, which allows you to make really long distance shots and still have an extremely precise sight picture. So I brought my CW9 car down, and with this little gun, we're gonna shoot this little munchkin at 200 yards up in the hills, applying this technique, and hopefully we'll make the shot. To apply this technique, instead of using the blade of the front sight lined up with the top of the rear sight, I'm going to take the dot of the front sight and raise it up so that it's out of the notch, but I'm still going to keep the front sight on my target. Bringing that front sight up like that is going to compensate for the bullet drop over that excessively long distance with just this little gun. So if applied right, we should be making contact. Let's see how it goes. I saw this shot, so I'm a little bit out of breath because you gotta run to make sure that is what I thought it was, and it was. So while making this shot, from that distance with these white dot sights, it literally would cover the entire target. You couldn't see what you were shooting. So using the Elmer Keith technique, you were able to raise it out of the back notch. I can't breathe. Out of the back notch, allowing you to keep your accuracy, aim, and also still see the target, which is key because it was a hard shot, not gonna lie. But yeah, it went great, and Elmer knows what he's talking about. And for such a small gun to be able to take that hit, I'm very impressed with this. All right, guys, be sure to like and share, and I'll see you out on the range. That was awesome. Hey, can I try that one? Yeah, let's see what the 380. Does everybody have eyes and ears?
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, August 16th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Chanuguk, Hyung Jin Moon. This is a very heartbreaking story, but it's also a break from our other heartbreaking stories. Baby dolphin dies after sunbathers pull it from water and pose for selfies on packed tourist beach. The small female, still of breastfeeding age, lost its mother and became stranded in shallow waters off the coast of southern Spain. We don't know how to dominate nature, do we? If it had not been for the fall, we would be able to have dominion, exercise dominion over nature with God's heart and with God's shimjung and with God's love. But we are ignorant, and this kind of ignorance causes us to take life meaninglessly. Of course, we can exercise. Part of exercising dominion over nature is to have the power of life and death, but to take life only to feed ourselves or when it is necessary in order to cull a population that gets too large, for example. But this is an example of the kind of tragedy that comes about as a result of our being ignorant of nature. Let's see what it says here. A baby dolphin has died after sunbathers reportedly pulled it from the sea and posed for selfies with it on a packed tourist beach. The small female, still of breastfeeding age, lost its mother and became stranded in shallow waters off the coast of southern Spain. Holiday makers allegedly took it out of the water before stroking it. See, even stroking a fish can damage it because we have oils on our fingers that damage the protective film on a fish's skin. Before stroking it and passing it around for pictures on the beach of Muacar last week. Children were seen accidentally covering the creature's blowholes as they joined the crowds gathering around to photograph and touch it. If this report is true, it's just absolute ignorance. Treating a fish, a living being, as if it were a toy, and absolutely no understanding. Marine conservationists raced to the scene at the seaside resort in Almeria province, which is popular with British expats and tourists. However, the dolphin was already dead when they arrived. Equinac, a group which protects marine wildlife in the area, reported the heartbreaking incident in its Facebook page. It criticized bathers for being obsessed with taking photographs. It said humans are the most irrational animal there is. Well, it's not that irrational, it's just ignorant. And many people are unable to feel empathy for a living being which is frightened, starving, hungry, without its mother, and terrified. In their selfishness, all they want is to photograph it and to touch it, even if the animal is suffering from stress. I would certainly agree with most of that. It is selfish. It is selfishness. It is ignorance. Even when the animal is suffering from stress, there's an inability to feel empathy because we are separated from nature as a result of the fall and because of our fallen nature. So, in order to correct this, what do we have to do? Well, we have to accomplish God's three great blessings: to complete our character, to form families, and then to exercise dominion over creation. On that foundation, I understand that Equinac, I'm sure this is an organization, an environmental organization that I'm sure they must have educational programs, and education, of course, is good for short term. But to really solve this issue, we have to establish a God's ideal world. And in God's ideal world, I believe that this kind of a foolish thing would not happen. Even if there were people who are ignorant in the area, many others would say, hey, wait a second, what you're doing there is wrong. Stop, don't do that. Stop taking those selfies. Don't take that fish out of the water. Don't take that dolphin out of the water. Trump accuses, so we're back to Trump now and with the serious news or the even more sort of serious news. Trump accuses Amazon of hurting tax-paying retailers. See, yeah, there we go. Trump and the king are on the same wavelength here. See, the king is saying, let's not subsidize Jeff Bezos. Let's not use Amazon. And Trump is also on the warpath against Amazon now. Macro. President Donald Trump lashed out again Wednesday morning at the online retailer Amazon, accusing it of harming tax-paying retailers and stripping jobs away from towns and cities across the country. Exactly right. Amazon is doing great damage to tax-paying retailers. Towns, cities, and states throughout the U.S. are being hurt. Many jobs being lost, the president wrote online just after 6 a.m. Wednesday morning. See, even as we are doing this King's report, the president is busy tweeting in accordance with the King's words, 6 a.m. in the morning. Trump did not specifically accuse Amazon of any particular crime or tactic in his Wednesday morning post to Twitter, but he has in the past accused the retailer of reaping a competitive edge by not paying enough in taxes. The president's tax-related allegations against Amazon are unclear, since the company has been collecting sales tax in each state that has won since the beginning of April. In 1992, the Supreme Court ruling generally bars states from collecting sales tax from companies that do not have a physical presence in the state. Trump also has made a regular habit of attacking Amazon over its connections to the Washington Post, a newspaper that the president feels covers him unfairly. Both Amazon and the Post are owned by Jeff Bezos, and Trump has accused the newspaper of protecting the retail giant from an increased tax liability with its coverage. Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. Washington Post is definitely not neutral when it comes to Amazon. It's not neutral when it comes to the CIA, with which Jeff Bezos has a $600 million contract. So Jeff Bezos is using the Washington Post to increase his empire, to become even richer. And it's right that President Trump is going after Amazon in this way. American Bar Association wants to let undocumented immigrants practice law. What is wrong with this picture? People who are breaking the law and who admittedly are breaking the law by being in the United States illegally, against the law, are going to be lawyers. Does that make sense? Well, the American Bar Association, the organization, the association of all lawyers in America, say it does. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me. Does not make sense to me. Let's see what kind of craziness is going on here. On Monday, the American Bar Association's House of Delegates passed a resolution demanding that Congress let undocumented immigrants practice law. The bar suggests that lawmakers should add this block of text written by the ABA's Law Student Division to this particular law. A state court vested with exclusive authority to regulate admission to the bar may by rule, order, or other affirmative act permit an undocumented alien seeking legal status to obtain a professional license to practice law in that jurisdiction. So an undocumented alien, undocumented means that they don't have a citizenship, right? It means that they don't have the documents that citizens do, a driver's license, a social security, birth certificate showing they were born in the United States, or somehow are citizen or naturalized citizens. To obtain a professional license, in other words, to obtain a professional license to practice law, in other words, to obtain a law license, to be a lawyer. This won't require state courts to license undocumented lawyers, but it would make it clear that the federal government won't get in the way. It would be a huge surprise if this move succeeds under the current administration. Republicans who have a reputation for pushing stricter immigration laws than Democrats maintain a slight majority in Congress. And then there's the President Donald Trump's policies don't tend to favor the undocumented. Immigration and Customs Enforcement have boasted that arrest numbers for both criminal and non-criminal immigrants recently skyrocketed thanks to new executive orders. A few states allow undocumented people to become lawyers. California started allowing some people to practice law thanks to a bill passed in 2013. Florida officials made Jose Godinez Semperio, who was born in Mexico, a lawyer in 2014. New York man Cesar Vargas, also from south of the border, was admitted to the state bar in 2016. Okay, so that's the craziness that is going on there, and that's going to be blocked, as the article acknowledges, because of Trump being in office. And so let's rally to keep him there, and don't allow the media to, don't be intimidated by the media that is going to call you a racist because you are in favor of sovereignty for the United States. If you happen to have white skin color and you are in favor of sovereignty of the United States, they're going to call you a white nationalist, and they're going to put you in the same group of people, like this guy that I told you about. They're going to put you in the same group of people as white supremacists and white racists. Supremacists and racists are a small minority. So the left is, what are they doing? They are redefining the term so that all white people, especially white people who support Trump and believe in the sovereignty of the United States, all white people are included in that category of racists and supremacists. Don't let them fool you. Don't let them intimidate you. They're just bullies. And you know the way that you have to deal with bullies. You have to stand up to them. You have to stand up to them. All right, so this is a crazy day, crazy as always, but let's be with God. Let's hang on to True Father no matter what happens, and we'll get through this day, I know. All right, so we're at the end of our broadcast now, so I wish you Godspeed, God bless, and may His kingdom come.